It's long been common knowledge that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein go way back. Trump has always, of course, though, denied knowing of Epstein's crimes. That claim, though, might no longer be tenable. House Democrats have released emails they've obtained from the Epstein estate, and they're pretty damning. So the first is an exchange between Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein from 2011, so quite a while ago. And it says this. So the first email is from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine, and he says, "I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim," and that's sort of blanked out, "spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there." Now, some of that, the dog that hasn't barked, I'm 75% there. There's a number of ways of sort of interpreting that. The context here is that Epstein pled guilty in 2008 to procuring an under 18, or I think maybe multiple under 18-year-olds for prostitution. Obviously, the whole thing there was that it was some sort of cover-up. He didn't really go to proper prison, and lots of his crimes hadn't been outed then, but many of them had. In 2011, he'd been complaining apparently about negative media coverage he was receiving. At the time, Trump was a reality TV star. So I suppose my interpretation here is that him and Ghislaine are saying, or the discussion is, why am I, Jeffrey Epstein, getting all this negative media attention when other very famous people who definitely are implicated, that's the implication of this email, aren't getting any? And then you've got Ghislaine saying, she said, "I have been thinking about that." So he's saying, Trump is the dog that hadn't barked. He's spent ages in my house with, alleged victim. Ghislaine says, "I've been thinking about that." So, that seems credible, let's say. And the second email exchange is from 2015. This is when Trump was running for president. It's between Epstein and the author, Michael Wolff. So this, I think, is slightly different because he's speaking to a journalist, and he's obviously a very manipulative, dishonest man. But this is before a Republican primary debate. So here, I'm starting from the bottom because that's how you see how the internet conversation happens. So Michael Wolff, on December the 15th, 2015, emails Epstein to say, "I hear CNN are planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards." So this is just before a Republican primary debate. And then Epstein curiously says, "If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be?" So that's sort of a suggestion that Jeffrey Epstein thinks he might have an in to feed Trump an answer for this debate. And then this is Michael Wolff's reply. So Michael Wolff says, "I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime." So this is really, really interesting. Trump at this point is running for president. It's very odd that Jeffrey Epstein is asking this, or it's somewhat embarrassing for this author, one would have thought, but he's asking this author for advice on what should I feed Trump if I were to be able to feed him something. And Michael Wolff seems to be saying, let him hang himself. If he says Jeffrey's a great guy, good for you. If he claims not to know you, or not to have been on the plane, then you can either out him, which sort of, I don't know why that would generate positive benefit for you, but there we are. Or if it looks like he could win, you can save him, generating a debt. That's really interesting. So he's saying, if he wins, you say, "Look, Trump, I'm not going to tell anyone about your involvement, but please, can you help me out?" Maybe that happened. Who knows? Apparently we know Trump was not asked about Epstein in the debate that those emails came before. There's a third email. It's between Epstein and Michael Wolff again, but this time from 2019. So when Trump is already at that point president, Michael Wolff had by then written what became quite a famous tell-all book about Trump's time in the White House, which involved lots of him sort of eating McDonald's and watching Fox News, as far as I understand. So this is the email then. So it's from Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff, 2019. And again, we've got a blanked out victim, Mar-a-Lago, and then something else blanked out. And then this is Epstein saying, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never remember ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. I'm not sure what... Ask Ghislaine to stop. There was sort of that he was trying to steal people from Mar-a-Lago from him at one point. I don't know if that's a reference to that. This final email I give the least value to in a way, because it is Jeffrey Epstein saying something to a journalist that makes Jeffrey Epstein look better. Not better. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein already looks very terrible by this point in time. But, you know, it's someone saying he didn't ask me to resign. I was never a member anyway. Right. Someone with a big ego telling that to a journalist. I don't put so much credence on that. But I do think the email exchange between him and Ghislaine in 2011 seems to me absolutely damning. And then the one from 2015 seems, I suppose, again, maybe he's, you know, it sounds like him and Michael Wolff have had lots of conversations about Donald Trump and the influence that Epstein may or may not have over him. Barry, what do you make of these three emails? Have we learned something significantly new that we didn't know already?
They're pretty damning. I mean, they've come out with no context, but on the surface of it, they look bad. I mean, I think the one that is most damaging for him is the one where Epstein says he spent hours with victim redacted because the House Democrats who released emails have redacted that name. But they have said that it is a victim. And I think that's incredibly damning for him because while Trump has admitted to being friends with Epstein, has admitted that he had a relationship with him, I think said that they fell out sometime in the early 2000s, he has always claimed that he had no knowledge of the trafficking. I think he's admitted or claimed that Epstein was a quote unquote creep when he was at Mar-a-Lago, and that's why he sort of expelled him, which obviously Epstein has denied in that email. But he always said that he didn't know about the trafficking. I think we have two emails here which suggest that he may have, depending on the context from which they came. And I do think that since Trump came into office, the Epstein thing has been his greatest weakness. I think it's the thing that has applied the most pressure to his presidency. And the pressure was already there before these emails leaked. There's a representative-elect, a congresswoman from Arizona, who is supposed to be sworn in, I think, this week or next week. And once she's sworn in, she's going to become the 218th signee needed to force a vote on releasing the so-called Epstein files. I believe they've held up her swearing in for a really long time. It's the longest time between somebody being elected and sworn in this century. And she's been saying all along that when she's in, she's going to vote this way to force this vote on the Epstein files. And obviously today with these emails coming out, that pressure is only going to grow. So then the question is, how does it play with his MAGA base? You know, I think that he had said very convincingly years ago that he could go out on Fifth Avenue and murder somebody and people would still vote for him. I think that's true with the base, but I think he needs more than his base. And we've already seen that this Epstein thing has alienated even some Republicans. So, look, I don't see that the pressure is going to go away, especially with this congresswoman coming in and the potential to force a vote on this. And the longer it stays in the headlines, the longer it's going to damage him. Because even with the current makeup of the Republican Party, I think there are people in the Republican Party for whom child trafficking is, perhaps a step too far.
We don't have time to discuss this angle properly because the show's about to end, but I just want to draw our audience attention to Dropsite News, who have published a series of articles based on another tranche of leaked emails. So these are emails from former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. They were released by a pro-Palestinian hacking group with speculative ties to Iran. That's how it's described by Dropsite News. And I'm just going to read, they've got a series of stories about Epstein in Israel. These are 4 headlines from them. They say, Jeffrey Epstein helped broker Israeli security agreement with Mongolia. And the next one is Jeffrey Epstein and the Mossad, how the sex trafficker helped Israel build a back channel to Russia amid Syrian civil war. Then there's Jeffrey Epstein helped Israel sell a surveillance state to Côte d'Ivoire, so the Ivory Coast. And then their most recent one, just from yesterday, Israeli spies stayed for weeks at a time with Jeffrey Epstein in Manhattan.